What's going on, everyone? It's Poppy TV. I'm your host Poppy, and welcome to another episode where you see Okinawa through my eyes. So guys, I'm back again. It's getting hot, temperature is rising. It's really sunny, really nice out, but it is hot and it's humid outside. So today we're going to, well, let me turn off the engine. So today we're going to talk about something more towards military members and civilians who want to live in Okinawa, because Okinawa is definitely a beautiful place. The people are nice, the food is great. As you can tell on my channel, I love food. I love the food here. It's really safe. It's a really great place to raise a family. However, there is a big downside in living in Okinawa, and that is employment. So for me personally, ever since I got back to Okinawa after getting out the military, I think in 2019, I spent a year off in the States, and then I came back like around November, and I'm just now getting a full-time position. So I was actually working at one of the BXs, and it took me a while to get a job. And on top of that, just to go off on a little tangent, I just got my degree, super psyched. Got my degree after and if you watch my introduction story, I mentioned that I had to drop out of school because I couldn't afford it, so I joined the military. And after pretty much 10 years, damn near, no, not 10 years, yeah, actually over 10 years, when I started my biotechnology degree, I finally got my degree in cybersecurity. I had to change majors. I had to, go through the military. I had to work hard. A lot of time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears put into it, but I finally graduated. On top of that, I got my certs. I have experience in aircraft maintenance, but it still took me over 6 months to get a full-time position here in Okinawa. So a little background of how the job market here is. I think the only way you can get a job here is based on a couple of reasons, based on a couple of factors. So either you're a retiree and you're just chilling, getting your paychecks, and you're living in Okinawa and you get your get your pay that way. You either own a business as a civilian, you own a successful business in Okinawa, or you do contracting or government work. Or number 4, you're fluent in Japanese and you can get a job off base, right? So as a retiree, a lot of the retirees here, they pretty much work at the BX. The BX are the AFIS, the Army and Air Force exchange service. They're pretty much, it's like the local on base, like I guess grocery store, retail store. For those who don't know, about stuff that goes on in military bases or haven't been on a military base before, they're pretty much a retail store, and it's a relatively easy job to get. But I've still heard of people that took months, sometimes years, to get a position on base, even at AFIS. So that's giving you an idea of how tough it is to get a job in Okinawa. So usually what a lot of retirees from the military, they would do, they would just get a part-time job on the BX, and then you would live off the retirement money, and they would just work here, on base for their SOFA status. So to go off on a little tangent here, for those who don't know, so in Japan, they don't play with illegal immigrants, right? They do not play. Like, if you are one day, I've heard stories, if you're one day illegally in Japan, they will call you up, they'll be at your door, and they'll be ready to deport you. They do not play. So basically, on that premise, right, you have 2 ways of being in Japan, or 3 ways actually, right? So you can either have SOFA status, which is pretty much a quasi like diplomatic status. I think it's called status of forces, right? And it's pretty much like a Japan and the Japanese government, American government have an agreement to allow, members of the DoD, you know, active duty military, reserves, and, you know, DoD civilians and contractors and their dependents to have kind of, as I mentioned before, a quasi-diplomatic kind of status where they can go to and from the island to the States. They're allowed to live here. Some of the benefits of SOFA, it allows you to, like, you know, because in Japan you have to pay a road tax every year to drive your car, and you get that cheaper if you're SOFA. You also have to pay what you call a Japanese compulsory insurance, which I mentioned in another video. You have to pay that every 2 years. So driving here is really expensive, and SOFA kind of cheapens that price for you, cheapen those fees for you. So yeah, SOFA is really sought after. But as I said, you know, a lot of retirees, they just go on the BX just to get that status, but they live off of their retirement benefits. Another category that I mentioned, you can either have a business here. There are a lot of civilians, even a lot of foreigners that come to Okinawa, and they have successful restaurants and other businesses. But usually they have, I'm assuming they have either some type of visa that allows them to be here, like a business visa that allows them to stay in the island, and they, you know, run their business and they make their living that way. Or you're a contractor or a government worker working for the federal government. You know, you're a contractor, you're working through a third-party company that, you know, bids for a government contract, and you get your SOFA status that way. You can also get your SOFA status that way, rather. Or you're a direct government employee, and you also get your SOFA status that way. And another category that you can do to live in Okinawa is you speak Japanese, which obviously will allow you to be hireable in Japan. But there are a couple of barriers to entry to that I think that are one of the biggest deterrents for people who want to live in Okinawa but may not be able to. So number one, the biggest one I think on the list in terms of living in Okinawa, the job opportunities, is a competitiveness. So you got to think, Okinawa is a really small island. Most of the economy is based on tourism and or the American presence here, the DoD presence here. So you got to think, all the DoD employees and contractors that have been on the island for years, all the senior NCOs, the senior non-commissioned officers and commissioned officers that retire and get out of their respective branches and look for jobs here, right? And even then, among themselves, I'd assume that it's competitive. So, especially for me, in my personal opinion, and this is just my personal take on it, just a disclaimer, I should have said this before, but this is just my personal take on it. So little me, because I was in maintenance and I wanted to go to IT, like, my little certificates is not going to trounce another guy or girl that's been in the IT industry with all these certs and all this experience, right? So the job competitiveness here is just fierce, right? Like, it's not unheard of. And even before I got out and decided to, I wanted to stay in Okinawa, I've heard that the usual wait time to get a job is 3 to 6 months. Like, I've known somebody that it took 8 months. I know another friend, it took him 3 months to get a job, get a decent job out here. It took me 6 months, almost on the dot, to get a good job. So yeah, job competitiveness it's just crazy. So most of the jobs, a great deal amount of the jobs that are on island are either IT, or there's some aircraft maintenance, or like admin and stuff like that. So when it comes onto IT, you gotta have all the certs, right? You gotta have all the certifications, or else you're just not gonna be competitive enough to find a decent job. Not to mention, if you're gonna find any job worth its metal here on the American side, you have to have a security clearance also. So that is a big thing. Another barrier to entry in terms of jobs here is a language barrier. So I think when I was about to come back to Okinawa, I had a job offer at a company on a private company off base, but I fit the bill. I had all the experience. I fit the description of the job, but my Japanese is not great. Like, I can navigate, but my Japanese is not fluent by any means, right? So because of that, I lost out on an opportunity. So learning Japanese, obviously being in Japan, it's a really big plus. And I really need to get on that. I've been trying to learn Japanese for years, but I've been, going on and off because of, work and other life experiences. But I think now that I'm done with school, when I'm out of the military, I have more time to focus on other things. I think I'm gonna ramp up my language skills so I can finally be fluent, be as fluent as I want to be. So another barrier to entry, which ties into job competitiveness, and what I mentioned earlier, is a limited amount of jobs. So as I mentioned before, the job compared to the States, obviously, which is bigger, or even mainland, there's not a lot of selection of jobs here. Like, I've seen, like, you can check out sites such as LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Dice, clearance jobs and all that, but from what you'll see, it's mostly like IT, electronics, a little bit of maintenance, a lot of admin, jobs like that. And there's some medical jobs, surprisingly. Like, I know there's like some lab assistant jobs here. There's I've seen a couple nurse jobs come up, but comparatively to, like, other places, there's not a lot of selection here. And as I said, it ties into the competitiveness. So there's not a lot of options, and then the little jobs that are here, for Americans at least, the competition is fierce. And the next topic that I want to go into is the nature of contract jobs and federal jobs. So if you want to work on the American side, if you, as I mentioned again, like, the contract jobs, the GS jobs, are the only jobs that will give you, like, a payable wage, or a decent living rather. But with contract jobs, being on a contract, you never know when your company might lose that contract, and then you lose a job, you're out of a job. Or if your plan is to stay in Okinawa permanently with a GS job, right, they could move you anywhere. Because when you're working as a federal employee, from my understanding, could be wrong, but from my understanding, it's kind of like you're in the military, to where you have a limited tour, and if the federal government says, hey, you got to move somewhere, you got to move. So that's another downfall of it. And outside of those jobs, and outside of those 4 reasons that I mentioned, there isn't a lot going on. There isn't a lot going on at all, because you got to take into account that in Okinawa, the standard of living is very, very, very low compared to what we're used to in the States. Like, I believe, from what I heard, I need to look at the stats, and I might put it in the links below, but from what I heard, again, this is just hearsay, the average wage of a person graduating from college in Okinawa, like, if he was to graduate from college and get a job at a company the next day, his average wage would be like $2,000 a month. So it's really cheap. The wages here are really low outside of contracting and GS jobs, or being a retiree. So I would recommend, if anyone wants to come out here in Okinawa, the best bet for you to do, especially if you're in the military, is just retire and come out here later, because that way you don't have to worry about anything else. You can get on base and stuff, but you probably would need to get maybe some kind of job on the BX to get yourself a license, or some other means of getting a SOFA. Another way you can stay on Okinawa, if you're a retiree, is obviously if you're married to a local, you can get a marriage visa, which is way more feasible than getting a visa, a work visa or whatnot. Because obviously with a work visa in Japan, if you quit that job, or if you lose that job, then you lose a visa. So yeah, those are a couple of the barriers to entry in Okinawa. If you're willing to, so what I did, in my situation, I had to start off at the BX and keep on applying, shoot, I even met up with people. Like if I was helping a customer, if I sometimes, even while I was working, like if I helped a customer and I noticed that they were a contractor, I would literally go up to them and, you know, ask them, hey, are you hiring? Is your company hiring? Stuff like that. So networking is really big here. Networking is a skill that I definitely didn't cultivate, that I should have, you know, been big on more. I'm more of an introverted person, so networking wasn't something that was second nature to me, but it's definitely a skill that you need in general in the job market, looking for jobs anywhere you are, but especially in Okinawa. It is who you know, not what you know. Because I know people that, you know, they just had a cert, you know, they just did a cert or whatever, and they have a good paying job just because of the people that they know. So yeah, knowing people, networking, that's another barrier entry that I should have mentioned. Networking, you know, you need to have your network, you need to be super competitive, you need to understand the job market in Okinawa, and you have to, and it would be good on your part to learn Japanese fluently, so that way you have as much ammunition as possible to stay in Okinawa if you so do wish. But the easiest route is to just retire and come out here and get some type of visa or social status to stay here. But job wise, it is competitive, and you gotta work 10 times harder than if you were to go to the States or even in mainland, because there's a lot of opportunities in mainland compared to here. So yeah, that's a little tidbit that I have on, you know, the job market in Okinawa. Please subscribe if you like the content. I know there's a lot of people are watching but not necessarily subscribing. If you want to see more content like this and help supporting my channel, I'd appreciate if you would subscribe. If not, then that's good too. But I'm definitely gonna leave links in the description for job sites, and maybe some tips in the comments for like to set yourself up for success if you want to stay here in Okinawa. Man, I'm sweating, sorry. So yeah, to set up yourself for success if you want to stay in Okinawa. But yeah, that's all I have for today. Remember to stay blessed and stay tuned, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.